Before we start, I need to say something clearly because I know how these videos get in the comments. This is not a political video. I am not here to tell you who to vote for. I am not here to tell you Trump is good or Trump is bad. I don't care about your party. I don't care about mine. What I care about is your wallet, your health, your student loans, your future, and what is actually factually documented happening to those things right now, in 2026, because of decisions being made in Washington that most young people don't fully understand yet. Because here's the truth. The people making these decisions are counting on you not understanding them. They're counting on the news being so loud and so political and so exhausting that you tune out and go back to scrolling. And while you're scrolling, the bill is getting signed. My name is Jonathan. I'm 27 from Miami, and this video is the one your government is hoping you don't watch. Let me start with the mood, because I think it's important to establish that what you're feeling right now is not in your head. Harvard Kennedy School's Institute of Politics runs what they call the Youth Poll. It's one of the most comprehensive surveys of young Americans' political and economic feelings in the country. They just released their latest numbers. Only 13% of young Americans say the country is headed in the right direction. 13. That means 87% of people our age, nearly 9 out of 10, look at America in 2026 and say something is wrong. And before anyone makes this about one party, congressional Democrats are sitting at 27% approval among young people, and congressional Republicans are at 26%. Both parties, almost identical disapproval ratings. This is not partisan frustration. This is generational frustration. Young people are not angry at a party. They're angry at a system that keeps promising them things and delivering something else entirely. And the most telling line from the Harvard poll? Young Americans describe the Democratic Party most commonly as weak, and the Republican Party most commonly as corrupt. That's not apathy. That's a generation that is paying very close attention and does not like what it sees. One analyst put it plainly: young Americans are sending a clear message. The systems and institutions meant to support them no longer feel stable, fair, or responsive. So if you've been walking around with this low-grade feeling that something is off, that the promises don't match the reality, you're not crazy. The data backs you up completely. Now let's talk about the law that is going to affect your life more than almost any piece of legislation in recent history. And most people your age have no idea what's actually in it. On July 4th, 2025, Independence Day, make of that what you will, President Trump signed what he called the One Big Beautiful Bill. That's the actual name, and it is massive. At nearly 1,000 pages of tax changes, spending cuts, and policy shifts that are already taking effect right now in 2026, I'm going to break down what's actually in it for you, not the political spin version, the real version. What it means for your healthcare, your student loans, and your financial future. Let's go piece by piece. First, the tax cuts. The bill makes permanent the 2017 Trump tax cuts that were set to expire. For most working people, this means modest savings. The standard deduction goes up slightly. There are new tax breaks on tip income and overtime pay if you earn those, and there's a bigger deduction for state and local taxes. Here's the honest assessment. If you make a good income, you'll probably see some benefit here. And so if you're in the lower income brackets, which is most people our age, the direct tax savings are small. We're talking maybe a few $100s a year for the average young worker. But here's the catch, and this is the part they don't put in the headline. Those tax cuts cost money, a lot of money. The bill is projected to reduce federal revenue by around $570 billion in 2026 alone. And that money has to come from somewhere. So where did they find it? They found it in you. Let's talk about Medicaid, because this is the one that I think most young people in Miami specifically need to hear about. The One Big Beautiful Bill includes nearly $1 trillion in cuts to Medicaid over the next decade. Not millions, not billions. $1 trillion. Medicaid is the government health insurance program for low and moderate income Americans. In Florida, in Miami, a massive portion of the population relies on it. And the changes are already starting to hit. Here's what changed. Starting December 31st of 2026, able-bodied adults between 19 and 64 who receive Medicaid through the expansion have to prove they are working, volunteering, or in school at least 80 hours a month to keep their coverage. That's the work requirement. Now, the government will tell you that most Medicaid recipients already work, and that's actually true. Health policy experts confirm that the population of able-bodied Medicaid recipients who genuinely don't work is fairly small. So then who gets hurt by the work requirement? The people who can't prove it fast enough. Eyes the people who work gig jobs with no consistent paperwork. The people who miss the bureaucratic deadline because they're working two jobs and don't have time to fill out the forms. The people in Miami who work cash jobs in construction, in restaurants, in landscaping, are doing real work, but whose employment isn't easy to document on a government form in 30 days. The Congressional Budget Office, which is nonpartisan, it's not a Democratic or Republican organization, it's the government's own math department. Projects that nearly 12 million Americans will lose health coverage under this bill by 2034. 12 million people. And the Urban Institute found that 3 in 10 young adults are now vulnerable to losing healthcare access, specifically because of these Medicaid changes. 3 in 10. Man, if you're sitting in a room with 10 people your age right now, statistically, 3 of them are at risk of losing health insurance. In Miami, where we already have some of the highest rates of uninsured residents in the country, that number is not abstract. That's your cousin. That's your neighbor. That's the guy you went to high school with who's working at the restaurant on Brickell and hasn't been to a doctor in 2 years. Now let's talk about student loans, because this one hits different for anyone who went to college in the last 10 years. The mega bill completely restructures federal student loans for anyone borrowing on or after July 1st, 2026. All the current repayment plans, gone. It's replaced with 2 options, a standard repayment plan and a new income-based plan called the Repayment Assistance Plan. The Biden-era SAVE plan that millions of borrowers were using, eliminated. But it goes deeper than just changing repayment options. The bill puts new caps on how much graduate students can borrow in federal loans and new limits on how much parents can borrow to help pay for their kids' tuition. There are also fewer options for deferments and forbearance, meaning if you hit a rough patch financially, the flexibility you used to have to pause your payments is now significantly reduced. And remember what we talked about earlier. The bill also cuts Pell Grants and scholarship funding, which means students who depend on those programs will either borrow more or drop out. Here's the consequence of all of this stacked together. Gen Z already carries an average of $94,101 in personal debt. That is the highest of any generation, higher than millennials at $59,000. Higher than Gen X at $53,000. We are already the most indebted young generation in American history. And the law that just passed makes the path to managing that debt harder, not easier. The Student Borrower Protection Center called it, and I'm paraphrasing here, a crushing blow to millions of Americans already struggling to cover college costs. Think about what that means for Miami specifically. We already established that you need $110,000 a year to live comfortably here. You're starting your adult life with $94,000 in debt on average. Your student loan options just got more restrictive. Your healthcare is less secure, and the cost of living in this city keeps climbing. That's not a rough patch. That's a structural trap. And it was designed, voted on, and signed into law. I want to zoom out for a second and give you the big picture number, because I think when you see it, it changes how you think about everything. The United States national debt right now is $38 trillion. Not billion. Trillion. With a T, the government is paying $10 billion a week, every week, just to service the interest on that debt, not paying it down. Just the interest payments. And the American Action Forum, which is a think tank that studies fiscal policy, Imad White at Study Ranks Renoirs and Bide, put out research this year with a warning that I want to read you in my own words. The country's high debt load exacerbates generational imbalances. Younger and future generations will face higher interest payments, slower economic growth, slower income growth, and a greater burden to bear for future tax or spending changes. In plain English, the bill for the decisions being made right now gets sent to you. Not to the people making the decisions, to you, the 27-year-old in Miami trying to build something, to the 23-year-old who just graduated with $90,000 in debt, to the 19-year-old who hasn't even started yet. The mega bill alone is projected to add trillions more to that debt over the next decade. And one analysis found that lawmakers could have extended the tax cuts for people making under $400,000 a year, which is everyone watching this video, while expanding programs like the child tax credit and healthcare subsidies for less than half the cost of what they actually passed. They chose not to. I'm not saying that to make you angry. I'm saying it so you understand with crystal clarity that the outcomes you're experiencing, the cost of living, the healthcare anxiety, the student loan pressure, are not random. They are the direct result of specific choices made by specific people who will not feel the consequences of those choices. You will. So what do you actually do with this information? That's because I've been building this whole channel around one core idea, that knowing the truth about your situation is only valuable if it changes how you move. And here's what I've learned from my own experience and from studying the people who actually navigate hard economies successfully. First, stop outsourcing your financial survival to systems that were not designed to protect you. I'm not saying the government should do nothing. I'm not saying institutions don't matter. But the data is clear. In 2026, the safety net is shrinking. The healthcare security that previous generations counted on is less certain. The student loan flexibility is gone. The programs that existed as a buffer between a bad month and a catastrophe are getting cut. That means your margin for error in your own financial life has to get wider to compensate. The emergency fund we talked about in video 2, that's not optional anymore. The multiple income streams we discussed in video 3, that's not an ambitious goal. That's basic risk management now. When the system removes its buffers, you have to build your own. Second, understand that the economy punishes dependence and rewards optionality. The people who are going to navigate the next decade best are not necessarily the ones with the highest salaries. They're the ones with the most options. Options to change jobs without desperation. Options to move cities if they need to. Options to weather a bad month without going into debt. Not options to take a calculated risk on something they're building because their survival doesn't depend on it working immediately. Optionality is built by reducing fixed costs, building buffers, and creating income that isn't tied to one single source. That's the framework. That's what I'm building my own life around and what I'm building this channel to teach. Third, and this is the one that I think matters most right now in 2026, stop waiting for the political system to solve this for you. Gen Z voted in huge numbers in 2024. Young people showed up. And the Harvard poll shows that 87% of young Americans still feel like the country is headed in the wrong direction. Both parties are underwater with our generation. The political system, regardless of who's in charge, is moving slowly on the things that matter most to people our age. I'm not saying don't vote. I'm not saying don't care. I'm saying that the time between now and whenever the political system catches up to your reality is time you're either spending building something or spending being angry at a Twitter feed. Marcus Aurelius governed the Roman Empire during plagues, wars, and fiscal crises that make our current moment look manageable. And he wrote something that I've been sitting with a lot lately. He said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The economy is outside your control. The megabill is outside your control. The national debt is outside your control. What is inside your control is how you respond, how quickly you adapt, how deliberately you build, and how wide you make your margin. The people who win in hard economies are not the ones who were dealt the best hand. They're the ones who stopped waiting for the cards to change and learned to play what they had. Let me close with something I want to say directly to the 87%. If you're watching this and you feel behind, genuinely behind, not by your own failure, but by the weight of a system that has been stacking the game against young people for years, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not wrong. The boomers at your age had more wealth. They bought homes earlier. They carried less debt. They had a stronger safety net. That is not opinion. That is documented data. You started from a harder position through no fault of your own. But here's what I also know. At 27, having built something from Miami with no generational wealth behind me and no connections opening doors for me, the tools available to you right now to build income, to reach people, to learn anything, to create something that generates value without trading your hours one at a time. Those tools are better than anything any previous generation had access to. The playing field is tilted against you in some ways, and it's been leveled in other ways that nobody is talking about enough. The path exists. I'm on it, and this channel is me showing you what it looks like in real time. I'm Jonathan, 27, Miami. Subscribe if you're done letting the system write your story. I'll see you in the next one.